So how do patients at Horton Thornley Medical Centres get access to their medical records? Well, the experience that we've had over the last 3 years is having posters in the waiting room, having a video playing on the plasma screen encouraging patients to get access to their records, and even having articles in local newspapers or on the radio hasn't really encouraged many people to come forwards. What we know is that if you raise the issue within the consultation when a patient comes to see the doctor or nurse, and at that point you encourage the patient to get access to their records, they're more likely to come forwards and take it. So what have I been doing in the consultation to encourage patients? Well, whenever a patient comes to see me, I'll sit and think about whether record access might support them. So for instance, if they've got a long-term condition such as diabetes or heart disease, I might, while I'm printing off a prescription, say, by the way, are you on the internet? Have you thought about getting access to your records? Or if a patient has just been discharged from hospital, having had a heart attack, and they're anxious and wondering what else they can do to look after themselves, I might encourage them and ask them if they've got access to the records and whether they'd like it. Or if they're going on holiday abroad and then suffer with long-term conditions, or they've been in the past poorly with it, they might want to get access to their records. Or it might be that they've come in, I've asked them to have a blood test done, and I'll say to them, why don't they get access to their records so that they can see the results online before they come in to see the doctor next time. Or when I'm referring the patient to the hospital for an appointment and I'm using Choose and Book, I might have a chat with them then and say, have they thought about going online and looking at their records whilst they're waiting, so that when the letter comes back from the hospital they can also see what the doctor's written about them. You'll find your own way of raising it, but it's usually a 10-second question which simply says, are you on the internet? Would you like access to your records? This is how it will help you. So what happens when a patient does say, yes, I would like access to my records? Well, there are a few things. I ask the patients to go back to the front desk and ask the receptionists for their PIN numbers so that they can register online to book appointments and order repeat prescriptions. I also ask the patients for their email address as well as a mobile telephone number. I'll write down their email address and mobile phone, and I'll explain to the patient that I'm going to send them an email later today, and in that email it'll send them to a web page on the practice website that gives them more information about what record access is, and in particular asks them to fill out an online questionnaire which takes about 10 minutes to fill out, and then a consent form that they print, sign off and hand back on the front desk. I specifically ask them if they've got a printer, because if they haven't, then they can ask the receptionists for a form that they can then sign and hand in once they've filled out the online questionnaire. The mobile phone I use to send patients a text message reminding them to check their email. My experience is that there's a lot of patients who don't regularly check their email, and a text message is a quick, convenient way of reminding them to check their email. And in that text message it's also got my email address, so that if they don't get the email they can always send me a message in the practice to say that they've not received a message. So, when they filled out the online questionnaire, what happens then? Well, our receptionists look at that online questionnaire to see if there's anything in there that suggests that we need to look a little bit more closely at the application. We start from the premise that most patients can get access to their records, so that most people should be able to do it unless there's a good reason not to. So for instance, if a patient in the questionnaire answers that they're going to feel anxious or panicky if they see abnormal test results, or an x-ray perhaps that shows a shadow on the lung, then that's the patient that we want to then contact and have a one-to-one conversation with, rather than just granting them automatic access. There might be another situation, for instance, where the patients might be under the secondary care mental health because they've got the conditions such as paranoid schizophrenia. Any patients that are under secondary care, i.e. they're at secondary care mental health, i.e. under the community psychiatric nurses or the consultant psychiatrists, we automatically consult with the CPN or the consultant psychiatrist, asking what they think about the patient having access to their records or not, so that there's a joint agreed decision made on that. If a child, for instance, wants access to the records, up to the age of 10, the parents are able to get the access automatically. Between 10 and 18, we ask the parents to get the access first, and then we ask the parent and the child to come in and speak to one of the doctors. When they come and sit down with us, we ask about what we're going to do about the passwords. Now, usually for someone who's perhaps age 10, it might be that the parents automatically have the access. But for instance, a 14 or 15-year-old girl who maybe perhaps wants advice about contraception, it might be more appropriate and agreed beforehand that she's now capable of getting her own passwords that she has on her own. I prefer this to be a joint decision between myself, the child, and the legal guardian. Of course, if the child wants access and doesn't want their parents to know about it, that is granted, as long as they are GILIT competent. But at least there's a process which is open and transparent, that we know, that the patient knows, the child knows, as well as the legal guardian as well. There is also the situation where patients might see third-party data or harmful data, and in the questionnaire that we fill out, we ask the patients to fill out, we ask them that they might see such information and this might upset them, and what should we do about it? If they turn around and say yes, that would upset them, then again we'll have a conversation with the patient asking them what I should do about that, because it's not possible for me to strip out such data with the system that we have at present. And usually, and up till now in every single case when this has happened, the patients have agreed that overall, on balance, it's better for them to be able to access the information, even if it means that they see third-party or harmful data, but on the proviso that if that's the case and it upsets them, that they come in and have a chat with us to find out what we can do about it. We are here to help rather than hinder. If the reception staff also, who actually process the requests, look at the record and see something that they think might upset the patient, for instance, there might be someone in their 70s who had a termination of pregnancy 50 years ago, back in the 1960s, when it was a taboo subject, then that's the sort of situation where they might turn around and say that they ought to come in and have a chat with the doctor first. I've had a few occasions where this has happened. The patient has come in and they'd completely forgotten that they'd had a termination in the past. They went on, found Mr. Right, got married, had children, had grandchildren now, and now have asked for access to their records and had completely forgotten that they'd had a previous termination. We found that by talking through the issues, the individual has been able to decide for themselves whether they want access to the records or would prefer not to. The important thing is that although it's a joint decision, the patient is able to make their view known and determine whether they should have access or not. And it's very, very important that patients are given the choice to decide whether they want it or not. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me. Here are my contact details. Thank you.